Welcome to this edition of the Head to Head Podcast. I'm your host, Cam McKinney. This is episode number 49 of the Head to Head Podcast. And in this edition of the podcast, I'm going to talk about Toronto Raptors President of Basketball Operations, Masai Ujiri. That's right, folks. Kawhi Leonard is getting most of the credit, and rightfully so, for why the Toronto Raptors are making their first trip to the NBA Finals ever. He is clearly probably the best NBA player to play for the Toronto Raptors. But the reason he's there, and the man behind this team, is their president / general manager, Masai Ujiri. This is a guy who makes big basketball moves that usually end up working out. This is a guy who orchestrated two of the biggest trades of the last 10 years, and he has made moves that are unpopular at the time, but really pay out moving forward for him. Masai Ujiri is one of the best basketball executives in the game right now. He should be in the same discussions with the Daryl Moreys, with the Danny Ainges, and with the Bob Myers as one of the top executives in basketball. Starting out, he was general manager of the Denver Nuggets, where he orchestrated one of the biggest trades in franchise history, trading Carmelo Anthony to the New York Knicks. Let's recap what he got in that trade. So everyone in their right mind thought Carmelo Anthony was going to end up on the Knicks. And everyone thought that Carmelo Anthony could have just signed there, that the Knicks didn't have to give up much for him. What he ended up getting for Carmelo Anthony was Raymond Felton, Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, Timothy Mozgov, and 2 first-round draft picks. The Denver Nuggets, folks, won that trade. They were able to remain relevant while getting huge pieces back. In today's world, when you trade a superstar player, Carmelo Anthony at the time was a top 10 basketball player. You traded a top 10 basketball player, you need to get a huge haul back. He got a huge haul back, and all of them clicked. Raymond Felton was good in Denver for a while. Danilo Gallinari ended up being really good. Wilson Chandler is an above-average player. And Timothy Mozgov at times has been a really decent NBA player. He hit that haul. Do you know who didn't hit that haul in a similar trade? The Minnesota Timberwolves, when they traded away Kevin Garnett. When the Minnesota Timberwolves traded Kevin Garnett to the Celtics, none of those players that they got in that trade remain with that team for more than 4 years. That's bad. Some of the people that were on the Denver Nuggets were there for a long time and were part of their future. He hit on a massive trade. When you trade away a superstar player, you have to hit on what you get back. And 2 first-round draft picks, and those players, Raymond Felton, Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, and Timothy Mozgov, were with that organization for quite a long time. To get that haul back for a guy who everyone thought was going to end up in New York or Brooklyn, and to get that much back for him is impressive when you look at other guys being traded. Kevin Garnett didn't even want to leave Minnesota, and all they got back was Al Jefferson, who really didn't work out for them in the end. I mean, Masai Ujiri hit on his first big trade. Now let's get into his second big trade with the Toronto Raptors this time. Now, president of the Raptors, he has been to the conference finals with Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, and Dwayne Casey as his head coach. And he decides to make a drastically different move and trade DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard. Now, at the time, I thought this was a gigantic risk. This is a guy in Kawhi Leonard who only played in 11 games due to an injury and due to conflict with the teams. Kawhi Leonard had been called out by Tony Parker and other members of the Spurs and Greg Popovich. His relationship with one of the best head coaches in the history of the game has been ruined, and his relationship with the leader of the team. Tony Parker is one of the greatest Spurs of all time. He ranks higher in Spurs legends than Kawhi Leonard ever will. But besides that point, I mean, Think about that. There was risk to this trade. DeMar DeRozan is thought to have been, at that point, maybe the second best Raptor ever to Vince Carter, and he signed a massive contract to stay with the team, and their centerpieces were him and Kyle Lowry, and they had gone to a conference finals. But Masai Ujiri was able to say to himself, you know what? I'm never going to beat LeBron James with these free people doing the exact same thing year after year after year after year. Dwayne Casey, DeMar DeRozan, and Kyle Lowry together were never going to beat the King, and they were never going to challenge the Warriors for an NBA championship. So he blew it up. And that is commendable to blow that up, because Masai Ujiri was not going to lose his job if he didn't do that. He took an actual basketball risk, and it paid off. He traded a top 20 basketball player at the time, DeMar DeRozan, for a top 5 who wasn't going to give him he wasn't going to sign a contract extension at that time. He made a huge risk, and now he has a chance to win the NBA Finals. Yes, at the moment I'm recording this podcast, the Raptors are up 1-0 on the Golden State Warriors, and I believe they have a legitimate chance to beat them. He has a legit chance to not only beat the Warriors, but keep Kawhi Leonard from going to the LA Clippers. He is going to prove that the Raptors are worth staying there, that they are a top NBA franchise. This is the guy that has done that. He hit on this trade. This was a massive trade to hit on. You traded a top 20 guy. DeMar DeRozan is good, but he's one-dimensional, for a top 5 NBA talent who is both a great scorer and great defensive player. You have arguably the second best player in the Eastern Conference, Giannis and Kawhi. And now you have a legitimate, decent chance at keeping Kawhi Leonard. Is Kawhi Leonard really going to leave a team that he made the NBA Finals with? Or, God forbid, wins the NBA Finals with? There's no way he's going to leave the Raptors. I actually don't think the Clippers are the favorite to get Kawhi Leonard. I believe the favorite to keep Kawhi Leonard is Masai Ujiri and the Toronto Raptors. Look at what they built around Kawhi Leonard. It's not a team that relies that heavily on its superstar, but it's pieces that fit so well with their superstar. And that's why Masai Ujiri should be the executive of the year for this trade. This was a trade that had a lot of risk. Some people thought it was brilliant. Some people thought it was a mistake. Some people thought, what's the point of this? They're going to lose this guy anyway. And some people question his hiring of Nick Nurse, who was an assistant with the Raptors, and Dwayne Casey. So they restarted with their own guy. They restarted with a new superstar, and now they are farther than they have ever been. That is a great year for Masai Ujiri. He has proven himself to be on that executive level. We talk about Danny Ainge and the trades that he's hit on. And I know the nickname Trader Danny has been talked about. He's the best at trades in the NBA. Masai Ujiri has made 2 of the top 10 trades in the past 10 years, and he has hit on both of them. He traded away Carmelo for many pieces, and everyone in their right minds knew Carmelo Anthony was going to leave the Nuggets, and he was still able to pull off a magnificent trade. Then he was able to trade a top 20 player for a top 5 player in Kawhi Leonard. Tell me that he's not one of the best executives in basketball today. There's no one in their right mind who can deny that. And I think right now he is the best executive in basketball. He's ahead of Ainge in my mind, and he's a little bit ahead of Bob Myers. Although Bob Myers did a fantastic job of drafting the Warriors, this guy is pulling off trades that are hitting the mark. Acquiring Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol, guys who fit around Kawhi Leonard. That is what this is about. Think about my Celtics this year. They didn't fit together with Kyrie Irving. And think about the Raptors. They fit perfectly with what Kawhi Leonard is. They are role players who are minimal to above average stars. I mean, Serge Ibaka is a lot better in Toronto than he was in Oklahoma City, for my money. And Marc Gasol fits better as a third-tier guy than a first-tier guy in Memphis. It's just working perfectly. And Kyle Lowry taking a lesser role this year is one of the reasons they're in the NBA Finals at this point. Masai Ujiri is responsible for turning a smaller market Toronto team into one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference and one of the best teams in the NBA period. Even when they had DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, and Dwayne Casey as head coach. They were in their golden age of basketball, and he has taken them to going even further. I expect years to come, they are going to be good. Even if they lose Kawhi Leonard, I think they are still going to be a pretty decent franchise as long as Masai Ujiri is here. Let's also talk about some of the guys that are now on the Toronto Raptors, not named Kawhi Leonard. Pascal Siakam has a chance to be a star player. For my money, he should win Most Improved Player this year. He has a chance to be a star player. He's the second best player on the Raptors. And when he can shoot the free at a high rate, they are unstoppable, because if you have Kawhi Leonard doing his thing and then Siakam hitting threes, that is when this team is at their most unstoppable. Then you have Serge Ibaka hitting threes at a higher rate than he's ever been. Listen, Nick Nurse has figured out something. I don't know if Nick Nurse is a basketball genius or not, but he's done a better job of coaching this team than Dwayne Casey ever has, and that needs to be given credit to Masai Ujiri for hiring the right guy and acquiring the right guy. And then the people he has at point guards, Van Fleet and Kyle Lowry. I think Van Fleet is better than Kyle Lowry, but I'm giving you Ujuiri credit for finding Van Fleet, because when this guy is on fire, they are a different team. They are a deep team. They were the deepest team in the East. And that's why they were able to beat the Milwaukee Bucks. They just were deeper. They had that starting lineup. They had Lowry. They had Kawhi Leonard. They also got Danny Green in that trade. The fact that you add championship talent to young players, that's going to affect how they play. They are well composed. That addition of Danny Green, I was shocked that they were able to get that and Kawhi Leonard. Because to me, Danny Green is an underrated big shot maker. And to get that along with Kawhi Leonard makes the Raptors look championship established, along with veterans like Lowry and Gasol and Ibaka, who have played in big games. They are a great mix of their starters, their veterans, and their bench is young with guys like Van Fleet. But also in their starters, you have a guy like Siakam, who, if Kawhi Leonard leaves, will probably become the best player on the roster, and I would still pick them to make the playoffs. Listen, I wouldn't expect them to go back to the NBA Finals, but I think the future is bright for guys like Van Fleet and Siakam, and the reason for that is Ujuiri putting together a team, and they're learning from Kawhi, and they're learning from guys like Danny Green. The future is so bright because the team is cohesive. It is a basketball team. It is not Kawhi Leonard's team. It is an actual basketball team. And to have a top 5 talent mix so well with these guys says a lot about Ujuiri, and it says a lot about Nick Nurse and the championship pedigree they are building in Toronto. I would not be surprised if they don't win it this year. They will win in the coming years because he has built an excellent organization where teams, the problem with these bigger market teams is the way they are run. Teams like the Knicks and the Lakers are run by, we need to get the next star, but we're not built right. Rob Pelinka is destroying the Lakers, and listen, I don't believe that much in Knicks management right now either, but if you got a guy like Masai Ujiri who can build something from the bottom up, and building a basketball team isn't just about building stars. Yes, Masai Ujiri needed Kawhi Leonard, but in his back pocket, he also had Pascal Siakam, Kyle Van Fleet, and a bunch of other guys. The fact that Kyle Lowry is even an all-star point guard from his time in Memphis says a lot about where the Raptors are as a franchise. And yes, there's a huge risk in trading DeMar DeRozan, the guy who was loyal to your franchise. That was a huge risk for Masai Ujiri to pull off. And yes, that maybe wasn't fair to trade DeMar DeRozan and to fire the head coach, Dwayne Casey. Maybe those aren't fair moves, but they are the best basketball moves to make. And they probably made Masai Ujiri throw up or something. He probably didn't want to do that to such good guys, and they've been loyal to his organization. But he had to make those moves to make the next basketball level. To reach the NBA Finals, to reach the pinnacle of success, he had to make moves that at that moment probably felt wrong. My guess is he didn't want to fire Dwayne Casey, and my guess he didn't want to trade DeMar DeRozan, but he felt those are moves he had to do because he couldn't keep doing the same song and dance over and over again, and losing to LeBron and losing to teams in the East, he had to make that next step, because that tandem of Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, as good as they were, as best friends as they were never going to reach that pinnacle of success that is reaching the NBA Finals. That duo was never going to reach there. If you had the exact same team as last year, you were not going to make the NBA Finals this year. The difference is Kawhi Leonard and guys like Danny Green. That is the difference for the Raptors. It is. It's that easy. And the other difference is Nick Nurse. Sometimes you can have a really good head coach. Dwayne Casey is a really good coach. He was the assistant for the Mavericks that beat LeBron's team. He's a really good assistant coach. And he was a really good head coach. And he deserves to be the head coach of the Detroit Pistons right now. But he does not deserve a chance to keep being the head coach of the Toronto Raptors if you do not feel you can win an NBA title with him as your coach. And my guess is Masai Ujiri reasonably said to himself, I need Kawhi Leonard and I need Nick Nurse. I don't think Dwayne Casey and Kawhi Leonard would have had this success that they've had, because Masai Ujiri took the ultimate risk and fired his established coach and traded away his loyal star in a city with stars who have not always been so loyal, a.k.a. Chris Bosh, a.k.a. Vince Carter. This is an organization that has lost many of its superstars, and to trade one away that was that loyal is the ultimate risk. And Masai Ujiri might have just pulled it off, because if he wins the NBA Finals, he is definitively going to keep Kawhi Leonard. There is no way Kawhi Leonard is going to leave the Toronto Raptors if he wins the championship with them. And even right now, I don't think there is any way Kawhi Leonard can reasonably say it would be about basketball if he joins the LA Clippers. There is no way. Masai Ujiri is the ultimate winner in this case, because if Kawhi Leonard leaves, he still looks like a genius. How can Kawhi Leonard leave this team that has proven its rookie head coach has gone to an NBA Finals and he gets to be the star? It can't be about basketball. He's putting all the pressure on Kawhi. It's brilliant. Trading for a guy who doesn't have a contract has worked beautifully for the Raptors. And I think he probably saw what happened in Oklahoma City with Paul George and said to himself, I've got to do something like that, because he can't keep doing the same song and dance of losing to LeBron and the other teams in the East with Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. As good as DeRozan is, he's a top 20 player at his best. Maybe not right now, he's not, but he was a top 20 player at the time. To trade a top 20 for a top 5 is a no-brainer, but it was still a huge risk, because you were trading away a guy who was loyal to your organization. Him and Lowry have been loyal, unlike Chris Bosh and unlike Vince Carter, who's the best player in franchise history. Those guys were not loyal. You traded away the one guy who was loyal. Now, Kyle Lowry's loyal, but you probably had to get rid of one of them. And even this year, people were saying that the Raptors should trade Lowry for Mike Conley, and instead he brought in Marc Gasol. He's probably proving you can win an NBA championship with Kyle Lowry. That's astonishing in and of itself, that he's going to win with Kyle Lowry as his point guard. He might win with Kyle Lowry as his point guard, which would be pretty shocking to me, because I've been pretty low on Kyle Lowry at points in his postseason career. But heck, he has done an amazing job. He's the executive of the year. Masai Ujiri is the biggest reason the Toronto Raptors are here. And if you don't know that, look at these moves. He traded away Melo and got a bundle of players back, and he made the trade and got rid of the most loyal player in franchise history to acquire Kawhi Leonard, and it was a risk worth taking. He is proven correct. I'm not saying, listen, this could have blown up his face, but it didn't, and he deserves all the credit for it not. So the next time you talk or you have a conversation about the best executives in basketball and the best run organizations, yes, you can bring up Bob Myers. Yes, you can bring up Danny Ainge. Yes, you can bring up so many other guys, but Masai Ujiri's name needs to be brought up. Yes, Daryl Morey is a genius in and of itself in some cases, but Masai Ujiri has done the best job possible at running the Toronto Raptors franchise, and he's been doing it as long as he's been in Denver. That's how long he's been brilliant at making these moves. Two of the biggest trades in the last 10 years. Yes, we talk about Danny Ainge making the KG move and then trading for KG and then trading away KG. Those are the two biggest moves. But Masai Ujiri's track record of trades is pretty good in and of itself. And if I were an NBA team, maybe I'd think twice about making a trade with Masai Ujiri because he is clearly one of the best executives in basketball right now. And if the Toronto Raptors win the NBA championship, it will be because of their president, Masai Ujiri. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Head to Head Podcast. I'm your host, Cam McKinney. There'll be a new episode of the Head to Head Podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. And hey, subscribe to the Chatter Podcast Network to also listen to my other podcast, Pop Culture Spotlight, where I talk about a movie or TV show or actor or filmmaker each week. That's the Chatter Podcast Network, home of the Head to Head Podcast and Pop Culture Spotlight. Please listen to these podcasts and please rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks again for listening.